The dinner was quiet, just the sound of silverware scraping against china. My wife, Elena, was scrolling on her phone, a small smile playing on her lips. She looked beautiful in the soft light of the chandelier, radiant and young. "Too young for me," my friends whispered, but I had ignored them. I looked down at the receipt sitting next to my plate. I had pulled it from the kitchen trash 10 minutes ago while she was in the shower. It was crinkled and stained with coffee grounds, but the numbers were still legible. "Elena," I said, keeping my voice even, "I was looking at the notification from the bank. It says we spent $400 at Whole Foods today." She didn't look up from her phone. "Organic is expensive, Harry, you know that. And I bought those supplements Dr. Aris recommended for your hip." I smoothed the receipt out on the tablecloth. "I know organic is expensive, but I looked at the itemized list here. The groceries came to exactly $200.12. She finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "So? Maybe I lost a receipt. I bought gas, too." "Whole Foods doesn't sell gas," I said, "and the transaction timestamp matches this receipt exactly. But the total charge to the card is $200 higher than the paper slip." I tapped the paper with my index finger. "The only way that happens is if there was a cash back transaction run separately, or if the merchant code was altered. But you used the Visa signature card. You can't get cash back at the register with a credit card, Elena. That's a banking regulation." She laughed, but it sounded brittle. "God, Harry, you're retired. Stop auditing the milk. It must be a bank error. I'll call them tomorrow." "Don't bother," I said, taking a sip of water. "I already checked the merchant category code on the digital statement. It didn't ring up as a grocery store. It rang up as quasi-cash/cryptocurrency, specifically a vendor called CoinGate." The smile vanished from her face. "You're tracking me?" she accused, her voice rising an octave. "I am your wife, Harold, not one of your criminal suspects. I bought a gift card for my nephew, okay? That's all it was. Why are you so paranoid? Is the medication making you delusional again?" She stood up, storming out of the dining room and slamming the door. I sat there in the silence, looking at the receipt. She played the outrage card perfectly, but she forgot who she was dealing with. I spent 35 years as a criminal investigator for the IRS. I hunted cartels, corrupt senators, and money launderers. I know that outrage is the first defense of the guilty. I picked up the receipt. A gift card for a nephew? We didn't have a nephew. She thought she was smarter than me because she was young and I was old. She thought I was just a boring accountant with a bad hip. But what I was about to find hidden in the cistern of the master bathroom toilet would prove that my wife wasn't just buying gift cards. She was laundering my life savings to run away with a man who thought Bitcoin was untraceable. If you believe that the numbers never lie and that thieves should always pay their taxes plus interest, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Let's start the audit. My name is Harold Banks. For 30 decades, I was the man people feared more than the FBI. The Bureau kicks down doors. The IRS kicks down your life. I traced assets for the Treasury Department. I could look at a man's lifestyle, his car, his watch, his shoes, and tell you within 5% what he reported on his 1040 form versus what he actually earned. I lived my life by the ledger. Debts on the left, credits on the right. If they didn't balance, someone was going to jail. It was a black and white world, and I loved it. But retirement made the lines blurry. After my first wife passed, I felt a gap in the ledger that numbers couldn't fill. Loneliness is a liability that accrues compound interest. That's when I met Elena. She was a nurse at the hospital where I got my pacemaker checked. She was 34. I was 68. I knew what it looked like. I knew the statistics on age gap marriages and wealth transfers. But Elena seemed different. She drove a sensible Honda. She talked about saving for retirement. She listened to my stories about tax evasion cases with genuine interest. I audited her in my own way. I checked her credit score, 720, respectable. I checked her employment history. Everything was clean. So I married her. For 3 years, it was a good investment. She made me feel young. Then came the hip surgery. 2 months ago, I fell on the ice. A bad break. Surgery, rehab, painkillers. For the first time in my life, I was dependent. I couldn't drive. I couldn't sit at my desk for long periods. The fog of the anesthesia and the opioids made me groggy. "Let me handle the bills, Harry," Elena said, taking the checkbook from my shaking hands. "You rest. Focus on healing." It felt like relief. I let her take the passwords. I let her handle the mail. I violated the first rule of forensic accounting: separation of duties. You never let one person control both the assets and the recording of the assets. For weeks, things seemed fine. Elena was attentive, but my subconscious, the auditor brain that never really sleeps, started noticing anomalies. Small things: the mail carrier coming later than usual, Amazon packages arriving that I never saw opened, and Elena's behavior changed. She became possessive of her phone. She started taking long gym trips. Then came the receipt at dinner. After she stormed out, I didn't go to bed. I waited until I heard the master bedroom TV turn on. She was watching her reality shows, thinking she had shut me down with her anger. I moved slowly to my home office. My hip throbbed with every step of the walker, but I ignored it. I sat at my desk and booted up my desktop computer. I tried to log in to our joint checking account. Password incorrect. I tried again. Password incorrect. She had changed it. She'd locked me out of my own liquidity. I leaned back in the chair. A standard husband might think she simply forgot to tell him. An investigator knows that a changed password is the digital equivalent of a barricaded door. You don't barricade a door unless you're hiding something on the other side. I looked at the framed photo of us on the desk. She looked so innocent. But in my line of work, the most innocent faces often hide the darkest ledgers. I pulled my emergency burner phone from the hollowed-out tax code volume 4 on my shelf and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Miller," a voice answered on the second ring. "It's Banks," I said. "I need a trace on a transaction." "Harry?" Miller sounded surprised. "It's 9 p.m. Are you working a cold case?" "It's a domestic case, Miller. I need you to run a merchant ID. CoinGate, Delaware." "Crypto," Miller sighed. "Who's the target?" "My wife." There was a silence on the line. Then Miller dropped into professional mode. "I can run it, but Harry, if she's moving money into crypto, it's usually for one of two things: ransomware or exiting the country." "Just run it," I said. I hung up. Exiting the country. I looked around my house. The comfortable chair, the shelves of books. It was a life I had worked 40 years to build. And if my gut was right, Elena wasn't just skimming off the top. She was liquidating the foundation. But she didn't understand the blockchain. She thought crypto was magic money. She didn't know that every transaction leaves a fingerprint, and I was about to dust the whole house for prints. The house was silent at 2 a.m. I listened to the rhythmic pattern of Elena's breathing coming from the master bedroom. It was steady. She was deep in a REM cycle, dreaming of whatever life she planned to buy with my pension. I wasn't sleeping. I was conducting a field audit of my own house. I moved through the hallway using my walker. My hip screamed at me, but adrenaline is a powerful anesthetic. In forensic accounting, we have a saying: follow the tools. If someone is moving digital currency, they need physical infrastructure. Elena changed the bank password, but she needed a way to authorize the crypto transactions. That meant two-factor authentication. It meant she had a second device. She wouldn't keep it on her nightstand. I might see it buzz. She wouldn't keep it in her purse. She often asked me to fetch her keys from it. She would hide it somewhere accessible but private, somewhere she went frequently where I never followed: the master bathroom. I crept inside and closed the door softly. I turned on the flashlight I kept in my robe pocket. I checked the cabinets. Nothing but lotions and face creams. Expensive ones, I noted. Another $500 a month I had ignored. I looked at the toilet. It's the oldest trick in the book for prison inmates and low-level drug dealers. The porcelain lid of the tank is heavy, noisy, and boring. Nobody looks in the tank unless the toilet breaks. I lifted the heavy porcelain lid, grimacing as the weight pulled on my bad side. I set it down on the bath mat. I shined the light into the water. There, taped to the underside of the lid with waterproof duct tape, was a Ziploc bag. Inside was a smartphone. I peeled the tape off. The bag dripped tank water onto the tile. I opened it and pulled out the phone. It was an older iPhone, not her current model. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. It was locked with a passcode, of course, but the notifications on the lock screen told me everything I needed to know. Coinbase. Withdrawal of 0.5 BTC initiated. Monero wallet. 150 XMR received. Signal. 3 new messages from Coach Ryan. Coach Ryan, her personal trainer, the guy she claimed helped her with her glute activation. I had paid for those sessions. It turns out I was financing her getaway driver. I couldn't unlock the phone, but I didn't need to get inside the device to access the money. Crypto wallets use a seed phrase, a 12 or 24-word master password that allows you to recover the funds from anywhere in the world. If you lose the phone, you use the phrase. Elena was smart enough to get a burner phone, but she wasn't disciplined enough to memorize 24 random words. She would have written them down. Where does a housewife hide a secret note? I put the phone back in the bag, retaped it to the lid, and replaced the porcelain top. I flushed the toilet to cover any noise I had made. Then I shuffled out to the kitchen. I scanned the room. The spice rack? Too messy. The junk drawer? Too chaotic. My eyes landed on the bookshelf of cookbooks. Elena hated cooking. She ordered takeout 5 nights a week. Yet there was a pristine copy of The Joy of Cooking, standing upright on the counter, next to the coffee maker she used every single morning. It was hiding in plain sight. I opened the book. It cracked. The spine had never been bent. I thumbed through the pages. There, written in the margin of a recipe for beef Wellington, was a list of words in blue ink. Giant, rubber, twist, October, falcon, gravity. 12 words, the keys to the kingdom. I pulled my burner laptop from my briefcase under the table. I sat down, my hands trembling slightly. I went to a blockchain explorer site. I didn't move the money. That would trigger an alert. I just imported the seed phrase into a watch-only view. The balance appeared on the screen. My breath hitched. $425,000. She hadn't just been buying gift cards. She had liquidated my bond portfolio. She had maxed out the home equity line of credit I opened for renovations. She had siphoned the joint savings. It was nearly $500,000 converted into untraceable Monero and Bitcoin. Stop. You need to understand what this means. If she gets on a plane with those 12 words in her head, the money is gone. There is no bank to call, no FDIC insurance, no reversible transaction. Once she crosses a border, my life savings effectively vanishes into the ether. I looked at the date of the last transaction, yesterday. Then a new notification popped up on the burner phone, which I had linked to my laptop via Bluetooth sniffer earlier in the week, an old FBI trick Miller taught me. Coach Ryan, flights are booked, Friday morning, Mexico City. Don't forget to wipe the old man's laptop. Friday. That was D-Day. The old man, I whispered, staring at the screen. They weren't just leaving, they were planning to erase the evidence. Wiping my laptop meant they likely planned to initiate a final, massive transfer from my primary investment account, the one with the $2 million annuity, and then brick the computer so I couldn't trace it until Monday. I closed the laptop. She wanted to play games with numbers? Fine. I invented this game. I didn't go back to bed. I sat in the kitchen, watching the sun come up. When Elena walked in at 7 a.m., looking sleepy and innocent in her silk robe, I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. "You're up early," she yawned, reaching for the coffee pot. "Couldn't sleep," I said, folding the paper. "I was thinking about taxes." She froze for a second, the pot hovering over her mug. "Taxes? Why? You're retired." "I got a letter yesterday," I lied smoothly, "from the IRS, a weird audit notice. They say there's a discrepancy in our declared income, something about unreported capital gains." The pot rattled against the mug. She spilled coffee on the counter. "Oh," she exclaimed, grabbing a towel. "Clumsy me. What did the letter say? Is it serious?" "It looked serious," I said, watching her pupil dilation, a classic stress response. "But the funny thing is, the letterhead was slightly off. The font was wrong. If I didn't know better, I'd say someone was trying to scam me." She wiped the counter aggressively. "Scam you? Like in identity theft?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe someone trying to panic me into moving money. You know what we used to call that in the bureau? A scare tactic. It usually happens right before a bust." She turned around. Her face was pale. "Well, maybe we should call a lawyer, to be safe." "Great idea, Elena. Why don't you call one? I'm sure you can find someone who specializes in hidden assets." I saw the gears turning in her head. I had spooked her. She thought I was on to the audit, but she didn't know I knew about the crypto. Now she would accelerate her timeline. She would panic, and panic makes people sloppy. But I wasn't going to wait for Friday. I was going to bring the crash forward. The coffee shop near the FBI field office smelled of roasted beans and bleach. It was 10 a.m. I sat in a back booth nursing a black coffee. Across from me sat Special Agent Miller. He looked the same as he did 10 years ago. Tired eyes, rumpled suit, and the intense focus of a man who stares at spreadsheets until they confess. He pushed a tablet across the table toward me. "You were right, Harry," Miller said, his voice low. "I ran the CoinGate logs. Your wife isn't just buying Bitcoin, she's tumbling it, mixing it through 3 different wallets to obscure the source. That's not something a housewife learns from YouTube." "Coach Ryan," I said, tapping the screen. "Ryan Zeller," Miller nodded. "He's a personal trainer at Iron Core Gym. But before that, he did 3 years in Arizona for credit card skimming. He's not a financial genius, Harry. He's a grifter. He finds wealthy women, seduces them, drains them, and moves on." I looked at the mugshot on the tablet. A handsome face, bleached teeth. The kind of guy who promises the world but delivers a bill. Miller continued. "He's got flights booked. Aero Mexico, Friday morning. 2 tickets, one way." "Friday," I repeated. "That's D-Day." "Harry," Miller leaned forward, "we have enough to arrest him now for the previous fraud in Arizona, but for Elena, it's tricky. Spousal access to accounts makes it a civil gray area unless we prove conspiracy to commit wire fraud. We need her to take the final step.
We need her to try to clean you out completely." "She will," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. "She's panicked. I told her the IRS is watching. She thinks she needs to move fast." "Be careful," Miller warned. "If Zeller gets desperate, he might decide it's easier to hurt you than to trick you. Do you have a weapon?" "I have something better," I said, standing up. "I have the tax code."
I drove home. The house was quiet when I returned. Elena was in the living room, surrounded by piles of paper. She looked frantic. "Harry," she exclaimed as I walked in with my walker, "where have you been? I've been calling you." "Physical therapy," I lied. "What's all this?" "I opened the mail," she said, holding up a thick envelope. Her hands were trembling. Whether from acting or genuine anxiety, I couldn't tell. "I opened the mail," she said, holding up a thick envelope. Her hands were trembling. Whether from acting or genuine anxiety, I couldn't tell. "You were right. The audit notice. It came today." She handed me the letter. It was printed on heavy bond paper. The IRS logo was at the top. Internal Revenue Service. Notice of deficiency and asset freeze. It looked terrifying to a civilian. To me, it looked like a cut-and-paste job from a PDF. The seal was pixelated. The reference number was 6 digits long. IRS notices use 9 or 10. And the threat was comically aggressive. Immediate seizure of all assets unless mitigated. "They're going to freeze everything, Harry," Elena cried, gripping my arm. "The checking, the savings, the house. They said if we don't move the assets into a protected trust by tomorrow, they lock us out." I stared at the letter. It wasn't the IRS scaring her. She had printed this. This was the trap. She wanted to panic me into protecting my remaining liquid cash, likely the big annuity, by transferring it to a trust she controlled. Then she'd drain it and fly to Mexico. "This is bad," I said, playing along. "I haven't paid taxes on the municipal bonds since '98. If they audit that—" "See?" she gasped. "It's the dementia, Harry. You're losing track of things." There it was, the gaslighting. She was rewriting history to make me the criminal and the incompetent invalid simultaneously. "What do we do?" I asked, looking at her with wide, fearful eyes. "I called a specialist," Elena said quickly. "A tax attorney Ryan knows. He's really good with crisis management. He says he can set up a blind trust instantly. We just move the money there, the IRS can't touch it, and once the audit is over, we move it back." "A lawyer Ryan knows?" I asked. "The gym teacher?"
"He has wealthy clients," she snapped defensively. "He's trying to help us, Harry. The lawyer is coming over tonight at 6 p.m. You just need to sign the transfer authorization." "Tonight?" I hesitated. "That's fast." "The freeze happens at midnight," she shouted. "Do you want to die broke? Do you want to go to prison for tax evasion at 71? She was pushing hard. She was overplaying her hand. "Okay," I said, slumping into my chair. "Okay, have him come over." Elena relaxed. She pulled her phone out and texted someone immediately. "He'll be here. Don't worry, Harry. I'll take care of everything." She walked into the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine. I watched her go. She looked triumphant. She thought the hardest part was over. She thought I was a scared, confused old man, terrified of the tax man. She forgot one crucial detail about my career. IRS agents don't get scared of audits. We eat audits. I waited until she went upstairs to change for the lawyer. I went to the thermostat on the wall. It was a smart unit, connected to the house Wi-Fi. I pulled the faceplate off. Behind it was the hollow cavity of the drywall. I reached in and pulled out a small black box I had stashed there yesterday. It was a portable Wi-Fi packet sniffer Miller had given me. It logged every keystroke and website visited on the network. I plugged it into my burner laptop. I scrolled through the logs from the last hour. Elena hadn't been searching for lawyers. She had been searching for flight trackers, and she had sent an email to lawyerstan@gmail.com, a generic address. The attachment was a PDF called Transfer Off Vance Final.pdf. I opened the attachment. It wasn't a trust document. It was a wire transfer authority sending $1.5 million, my entire annuity balance, to an account in the Cayman Islands. The lawyer coming tonight wasn't a lawyer. It was probably Ryan or one of his grifter buddies coming to collect the signature. I checked my watch. 4 p.m. I had 2 hours before they arrived, 2 hours to turn my dining room into a federal trap. "Elena," I called out, my voice shaky, "I need help with my pills." "Coming," she yelled down. I smiled grimly. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted, a confused old man signing papers. But the paper I was going to slide into that stack wasn't a transfer authorization. It was a confession of judgment. And when Lawyer Stan walked through that door, he wouldn't find a victim. He'd find Agent Miller sitting in the pantry with a badge and a pair of handcuffs. At 5:45 p.m., I unlocked the kitchen's service door. Agent Miller slipped inside like a ghost in a Navy windbreaker. He wasn't carrying a briefcase. He was carrying a service pistol on his hip and a tactical radio. He moved silently to the pantry, stepping over the threshold where I kept the broom and the dustpan. "You have a sight line to the dining room?" Miller whispered, cracking the louvered door. "Perfect," I said, handing him a bottle of water. "Remember, Miller, don't move until the pen touches the paper. I need the intent to defraud documented. I need them to think they won." "You're enjoying this too much, Harry," Miller murmured, shaking his head. "Most victims are crying by now. You look like you're about to give a seminar." "I spent 40 years calculating interest," I said, closing the pantry door. "Tonight, I'm collecting the principal." I shuffled back to the dining room. I sat at the head of the table. Elena had set it up like a boardroom, a pitcher of water, glasses, 3 chairs. She was wearing a conservative navy dress, looking every inch like the concerned wife trying to save the family fortune. But I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She probably lost it earlier today, already mentally divorced. At 6 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. Elena jumped. "He's here. Okay, Harry, please, let him do the talking. He's an expert." She ran to the door. I heard hushed whispers in the foyer, then steps. Elena walked in, leading a man who looked like he had bought his suit at an airport gift shop. It was shiny, polyester. His tie was too wide for the collar. But the face was handsome. Bleached teeth, jawline. It was Coach Ryan Zeller. He was wearing glasses now, trying to look intellectual, but he walked with the swagger of a man used to lifting heavy weights, not heavy torts. "Mr. Banks," Zeller said, extending a hand. His grip was aggressive, a crushing squeeze meant to intimidate. "I'm Stan Stanhope, Special Tax Counsel." "Mr. Stanhope," I said, limp-wristing the handshake on purpose. "Thank you for coming on such notice. Elena says the IRS is seizing everything at midnight." "That is correct," Zeller said, opening a leather portfolio. He pulled out a stack of documents. "The Asset Freeze Order 404 is active. We have a very narrow window to divert your liquidity into a blind Caribbean trust to shield it from the audit." "A Caribbean trust?" I asked, putting on my reading glasses. "Is that compliant with the FATCA regulations? I thought offshore holding companies require FBAR reporting." Zeller blinked. Yes, it's fully compliant under the new 2024 loopholes. It's a specialized vehicle." "Fascinating," I muttered, pulling the papers toward me. I scanned the trust agreement. It was garbage. It was a boilerplate will and testament template he must have downloaded from LegalZoom with the titles changed in Word. The word liabilities was misspelled twice. This fake IRS letter, I pointed to the crumpled paper Elena had given me earlier. It says I owe taxes on unrealized crypto gains, but the IRS doesn't tax unrealized gains unless you're a billionaire. I'm just a retiree, Mr. Stanhope. Zeller shifted in his seat. He looked at Elena. Elena stepped in immediately. "Harry, stop arguing," she pleaded, touching my shoulder. "Mr. Stanhope knows the law. You're confusing things again. Remember, you told me you bought Bitcoin in 2010? You probably forgot. Just sign the paper so we don't lose the house." "I bought Bitcoin?" I looked at her, widening my eyes. "My goodness, my memory is worse than I thought." "It's okay, Harry," she soothed. "Just sign the transfer. It moves the annuity cash, $1.5 million, into the safety account. Mr. Stanhope will hold it until the audit clears." $1.5 million, Zeller repeated, licking his lips. Greed is a physical tell. His pupils were dilated. He wasn't thinking about the law. He was thinking about the Lamborghini he was going to buy in Mexico City. I picked up the pen. I let my hand hover over the signature line. "Wait," I said, dropping the pen. "What now?" Zeller snapped, his patience fraying. "I just feel like I should call my CPA, Dave Miller. He handles my filings. If I transfer this, won't it trigger a suspicious activity report at the bank?" "I am your attorney right now," Zeller shouted, standing up and slamming his hands on the table. "You don't call Dave. You listen to me. The FBI is already looking at your accounts, Harold. If you don't move this money in 10 minutes, they will come through that door and arrest you for tax evasion. Do you want to die in a federal prison hospital?" Elena started crying. "Harry, please, do it for me. I can't go to jail. They said they'd arrest me, too." It was masterful theater. Fear, intimidation, guilt. "Okay," I whispered, shaking. "Okay, I don't want you to go to jail, Elena." "Then sign," she urged, pushing the pen back into my hand. I picked it up. I looked at the document. It was a wire transfer authorization disguised as a trust formation. It listed the destination account, Cayman National Bank, account holder ZELLER Holdings. He hadn't even been smart enough to hide his name. He was arrogant. He thought I was so far gone I wouldn't notice. "You know," I said, looking up at Zeller, "there is one problem with this form." "What?" Zeller hissed. "The Section 7206 declaration," I said, my voice losing the tremor. "It requires a witness signature from a licensed officer of the court." "Are you?" Zeller asked, taking off my glasses and folding them neatly on the table. "Because I ran your bar association number from your business card this afternoon. It belongs to a divorce lawyer in Topeka named Susan." The silence in the room was absolute. Zeller froze. Elena stopped crying instantly. Her face went slack. "What did you say?" Zeller whispered. "And your shoes," I pointed to his feet. "Those are running shoes painted black. No tax attorney wears sneakers to $1 million closing, Ryan." "Ryan?" I used his real name. Elena gasped. She backed away from the table. "Harry?" "You're not a lawyer," I continued, standing up slowly. I didn't need the walker anymore. I stood tall. "Now, you're not a worried wife. You're a co-conspirator in a federal wire fraud case." Ryan looked at the door. Then he looked at me. He saw an old man. He saw a frail old man standing between him and $1.5 million. He didn't know about Agent Miller in the pantry. "Okay," Ryan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "Okay, genius, you figured it out. So now we do it the hard way."
He reached into his jacket. He didn't pull out a pen. He pulled out a stun gun. The crackle of electricity filled the room. "Sign the paper, Harold," Ryan commanded, moving around the table, "or I cook your pacemaker until your heart stops. It'll look like natural causes." Elena screamed. "Ryan, no! That wasn't the plan." "The plan changed," Ryan shouted at her. "He knows. Sign the damn paper." He lunged at me. "Audit closed," I said loud enough for the pantry door to hear. The pantry doors exploded outward. Agent Miller hit Ryan like a linebacker sacking a quarterback. The stun gun flew from Ryan's hand, skittering across the hardwood floor and sparking harmlessly against the baseboard. Miller drove his shoulder into Ryan's gut, slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. "Federal agents," Miller shouted, his voice booming in the small room. "Drop to the ground, now!" Ryan crumpled, gasping for air, clutching his ribs. He tried to scramble away, but Miller twisted his arm behind his back in a seamless tactical maneuver. A second later, the distinct click of steel handcuffs ended the struggle. "Ryan Zeller," Miller announced, breathing hard but calm, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and assault." Elena stood by the window, her hands pressed over her mouth. She was shaking so violently that her teeth chattered. She looked at Ryan, her strong, confident savior, now whimpering on the floor. Then she looked at me. "Harry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Harry, please, he forced me. I didn't want to do it. I was scared." I looked at her. It was the same look she gave me when she broke my favorite coffee mug last month, an innocent, pleading fragility. It used to work, but numbers don't have feelings, and I was just balancing the books. "He didn't force you to tape a burner phone to the toilet lid, Elena. And he didn't force you to write down the seed phrases in your cookbook. You did that because you were greedy." "It was just a mistake," she sobbed, stepping toward me. "We can fix this. Just tell them not to arrest me. We're married. You can't testify against me." "Spousal privilege," I nodded, walking over to the table to retrieve my glasses. "It's a common misconception. It protects confidential communications during a marriage. It does not protect spouses when they are joint participants in a crime against a third party, or when the crime is against the spouse." I put my glasses on. I picked up the fake trust document. "And besides," I continued, "I don't need to testify. The Wi-Fi sniffer behind the thermostat logged every keystroke. It logged your login to Coinbase. It logged the transfer requests. The evidence testifies for itself." Miller hauled Ryan to his feet. Ryan glared at me, the arrogance gone, replaced by the cornered hatred of a con man whose luck had run out. "You old goat! You think you won? The money is already gone. I moved the first batch to a cold wallet on Monday. You can arrest me, but you'll never find the private keys. It's $500,000, Banks. It's my retirement fund." He laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Enjoy your empty house." I looked at Ryan. I looked at the smug satisfaction in his eyes. He thought he had a nest egg waiting for him when he got out of parole in 5 years. "The cold wallet," I repeated, "the one secured by the 12-word seed phrase you wrote in the margins of The Joy of Cooking?" Ryan's smile faltered. "How?" "I audited the cookbook on Tuesday, and here is the thing about cryptocurrency, Ryan. It's math. If you have the keys, you have the money." I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened a banking app. I held the screen up so they could both see it. "I transferred the Monero out of your wallet 3 hours ago. Every cent, including the money you stole from your other clients in Arizona. I aggregated it all into a secure FBI holding account pending restitution." "No, you couldn't," he whispered. "I did," I said, "and then I calculated the tax liability on the transaction just for fun. You owe the IRS about 40%, plus penalties for failure to report. Even if you kept the money, you'd be broke." Ryan slumped against Miller. The fight was gone. The money was gone. "Elena Banks," Miller said, looking at my wife, "stand up and put your hands behind your back." Elena wailed. It was a high, thin sound of absolute despair. "Harry, don't let them take me. I'm your wife. Who will take care of your hip?" "My hip is healing fine, and as for care, I think I can afford a professional nurse now, one who has passed a background check." They led them out the front door.
The neighbors were watching from their porches, the blue lights of the backup cruisers reflecting off the quiet suburban siding. I stood in the doorway, leaning on my cane, watching the back of the squad car swallow my marriage. I felt light, the heaviness in my chest, the fog of the medication she had been giving me. It was all lifting. Miller walked back up the driveway. He handed me a receipt for the evidence seized, the phone, the stun gun, the laptop. "You okay, Harry?" Miller asked. "I'm solvent, that's all that matters. We'll need a formal statement tomorrow, but for tonight, lock the door, get some sleep. Real sleep, not that drug-induced stuff she was feeding you." "Miller," I asked as he turned to leave, "what's the guideline sentencing for this, roughly?" Miller did the math in his head. Wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse enhancement, assault on a federal officer if we count the stun gun attempt, plus Ryan's priors, he's looking at 20 years. Elena, maybe 8 to 10 if she flips on him, which she will. 10 years, I nodded. A decade of depreciation. "Good night, Harry," Miller said. "Good night, Agent." I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I walked to the kitchen. I picked up The Joy of Cooking from the counter. I opened it to the Beef Wellington page. I ripped the page out. Then I walked to the sink, struck a match, and burned it. The ash curled in the sink, gray and final. The codes were useless now. The money was safe. The threats were gone. I sat down at the kitchen table. The house was empty. The silence wasn't lonely. It was clean. It was the silence of a balanced ledger. No hidden debts, no fraudulent entries, just the truth. But as I looked at the empty chair across from me, I realized there was one final accounting task to perform. I picked up my phone. I dialed my lawyer, my real lawyer. "Start the divorce proceedings," I told the voicemail, "and check the prenup clause regarding infidelity. I want to make sure she doesn't keep the Honda." The trial took place 6 months in a federal courtroom that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I sat in the back row, wearing my best suit, my hip finally healed enough that I only needed a cane for balance. Elena sat at the defendant's table. The designer dresses were gone, replaced by a gray jumpsuit that washed out her complexion. She looked older. The stress of pre-trial detention had done what her expensive face creams never could. It revealed her true age. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Miss Chang, laid out the timeline with mathematical precision. She projected the text messages on the big screen. The jury read the conversations between wife and Coach Ryan. They saw the plans to liquidate my annuity. They saw the mockery of my age. "He's just an ATM with a pulse," one text read. The jury flinched. Elena put her head down on the table. When Ryan Zeller took the stand, he did exactly what I predicted. He flipped. He testified that Elena was the mastermind, that she seduced him to helping her move the money. He tried to paint himself as a victim of love. It was a pathetic performance. The prosecution destroyed him with his own criminal record from Arizona. The verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. At the sentencing hearing, the judge asked me if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked at Elena. I didn't see the woman I loved anymore. I saw a liability I had finally written off. "Your Honor," I said into the microphone, "for 35 years I investigated financial crimes. I saw people destroy their lives for greed. But I never understood the personal cost until I found my wife's burner phone in a toilet tank." I paused. The room was silent. The defendant didn't just steal money. Money is a renewable resource. She stole trust. She stole the last few years of peace I thought I had earned. She turned my home into a crime scene and my recovery into a manipulation. She taxed my heart, Your Honor, and the interest rate was ruinous. The judge gave her 8 years in federal prison. Ryan got 15, owing to his prior convictions and the use of the stun gun. They were also ordered to pay full restitution, though I doubt I'll ever see a dime from either of them. Their future earning potential is 0.
I finalized the divorce while she was in custody. It was a summary judgment. I kept the house, I kept my pension, I kept the accounts I had secured, I even kept the Honda she drove, which I promptly sold to a scrapyard because I couldn't stand looking at it in the driveway. Life is quiet now, but it's a good quiet. The IRS audit scare actually motivated me to tidy up my own finances for real. I moved my assets into a new trust managed by a firm Agent Miller recommended, people who don't have gym memberships or secret boyfriends. Miller and I have lunch once a month. He's trying to get me to come back as a consultant for the Bureau's Forensic Accounting Division. "We need eyes like yours, Harry," he tells me. "Computers are fast, but they don't have intuition." I'm thinking about it. I hired a home health aide, a nice woman named Sarah. She comes 3 times a week to help with heavy cleaning and meal prep. The first day she arrived, I handed her a background check authorization form and told her there were cameras in the house. She didn't get offended. She smiled and signed it. "Smart man," she said. "Trust needs verification." We get along fine. Sometimes late at night, I sit in my office and look at the empty space on the bookshelf where the fake law books used to be. It hurts, realizing how close I came to losing everything. If I hadn't checked that receipt, if I hadn't known the merchant codes, I would be destitute right now. But I did check, because that's who I am. People tell you that love is blind. Maybe it is, but marriage shouldn't be. Marriage is a partnership, and like any business, it requires transparency. If your partner starts hiding their phone, if the passwords change, if the math stops adding up, don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it. Audit it. You might feel paranoid. You might feel like a cynic, but it is better to be a lonely cynic in a paid-off house than a romantic optimist sleeping in a shelter. I'm Harold Banks. I'm 72 years old. My ledger is balanced, my debts are paid, and my house is clean. This is John Vengeance. If you enjoyed seeing the numbers add up to justice, click that like button and subscribe for more stories of truth and consequences. Share this with anyone who thinks they can outsmart the auditor. Stay solvent, stay vigilant, and always check the receipt.